Mayor Skoog.
Present.
Vice Mayor Anderson.
Here.
Council members Grossman.
I'm here.
Nye.
That's me, and I am here.
Mallory.
Yes.
Marshall.
Here.
And Whiting.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mayor.
Thank you, Diane. Okay, we're gonna, if it's okay with the council, we're gonna change the order just a little bit. We'll start with A, B, and then go to E. Start with A. General overview, Larry Tarkowski, Town Manager, and William Calpe, Management Services Director. You're on, Larry.
Okay, Mayor and Council, it is our pleasure to take another step forward with the budget process. You will recall that this started back, I believe it was the first week in November, and there's been a lot of work done since then. And I'm very proud of the work that has been done on the budget by all of our employees. As they sit down and look at a zero-based budget process, they sit down and take a look at what their needs are. They go ahead and work that using all of the employees in the organization, and then it works its way up through the process. Then, as you were aware, you had 2 retreats. You gave very clear direction to town staff, and on that basis, we started building the budget. And with the budget request coming up through the ranks, going ahead and making sure that our employees have the tools they need to serve the community. And so that's the basis on which we work. Then Bill and I sit down with all of the department heads and his team. And his team includes more than just Bill, although Bill gets the lion's share of the blame and the credit. But he's got a very capable staff that really make him look good. And they've done a good job of putting this document together. So to that end, if you would turn to page 1-3, you'll see the annual letter that we put together. This is going to be a banner year. A banner year in that we have had a record year this year, both in terms of accomplishments and revenue collection and service delivery. And I fully anticipate that 16-17 will exceed this banner year in terms of service delivery, in terms of growth of the community, in terms of all of our efforts to integrate all of our new citizens into the fabric of this community. And that's what this is all about. It's not just about building roads and maintaining roads and building water lines and drilling water wells. It's about getting all of our community engaged and being part of the community and taking part in that process. So to that end, and Bill's going to go into the numbers, but essentially we're looking at an $82 million budget. Let's put that in perspective. $82 million plus the nickels that he will talk about. But remember, the biggest budget this town had was $111 million. So we are still a far sight away from where we were in the 06 budget year in terms of revenue. Okay, we're working our way back, but we are as efficient as we have ever been. And it's very important to state that as we add services or as we improve services or refine services, that we are serving this community with 5 employees per 1,000 citizens. Let me say this again, because this is darn important. We're doing it with 5 employees per 1,000 citizens. Other communities all around the state and all around the nation are requiring 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 employees per 1,000 citizens. We are doing it in a very unique and efficient and productive fashion. And we are leaving a legacy in our efficiency, and we are also held up as a model around the state on how to govern a community and how to provide services to a community. And we're really proud of that. And your employee base similarly is very proud of that. Okay, looking at the letter that is in your book, it lays out some of the goals that we have for the new year that have been refined and actually have been developed based on our retreats. You've given us direction, and we believe we are fulfilling your desires as best we are able to with the dollars available. It's very exciting and important to note that we will be hiring more police officers this year than we have ever hired in one year in the history of the town of Prescott Valley. Number 2, you have a public works maintenance and building budget that is the largest in the history of the town of Prescott Valley. And that is because there are dollars available to catch up on deferred maintenance that has been the result of the recession that we had. And you listened to folk and directed us very clearly. We want the roads fixed, and so we are certainly doing that. And Norm has presented a plan to you on how we're going to do that, how we're going to move forward and make the biggest investment in our infrastructure in this town's history. And that's very gratifying. Now, as you might well imagine, every department has more desires than what we have funds available. What's new? Excuse me. That happens every year. We go ahead and listen to requests that far exceed our ability to service those. And so pretty much every department is seeing a benefit this year that is something that hasn't happened in a really long time. And to that end, Parks and Rec, for example, is getting a recreation supervisor. We have not been able to put new bodies to that department, new effort to that department in about 9 years. and they've lost staff, but we haven't been able to supplement. And I would anticipate next year we will end up doing the same. And so that's the story pretty much across the board. And so with that in mind, I'm going to sit down and let Bill go ahead and carry forward the numbers.
Thank you, Larry. Mayor, Council. Before I start, I would like to thank all the department heads and their staff in preparing our budget this year. I feel that we're very fortunate to have such a management team that has so much experience. Majority of the staff, department heads primarily, have been with us for well over 10 years. So that really, really is helpful through the budget process. They know what to expect. Yes, there's arguing and there's some complaining and everything, but we are very fortunate to have this group. And then there's people like Larry and Stuart and Ivan who've been here for, I don't know, since 25 years, 30 years, whatever it is. So those are the ones, the younger ones are easier to deal with. Then as they get older, more experience here, they do get a little bit harder to deal with. So.
Sounds like discrimination.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then the other part, like Larry said, I was going to bring that
you would give numbers.
Like Larry said, I do have 3 staff members that I'm very fortunate to have that work with me during the budget process. Brandy and Irina, they did a marvelous job assembling and the budget and doing all the payroll calculations and things like that. And I was fortunate enough that Irina actually waited to finish the budget book before she had her baby. So I thought I was very fortunate that she waited for to finish the budget, and then she had her baby. So I felt very fortunate. The other part is Lee has done a fantastic job. She assembles 25 books. It's 450 pages each. And she does all the different covers for everyone. So I feel very fortunate to have someone like Lee working with me, because last week was if you saw Lee last week, you noticed that she was pretty stressed out. So it was pretty tough week. Now, as it comes to covers, my favorite, I think, is going to be this one right here, is the one that I'm going with right now. No. It's Larry. This is Larry's cover, what Larry has right now. But, it's him charting his plan, going up Glassford Hill. So, I don't know, I thought that was a very appropriate cover for this fiscal year. So, with that, we'll start with the budget. For the current fiscal year, the total budget, proposed budget, is $82,216,692. And you can see it's compared to $76 million and change from the previous year. That's 8.7% increase. So tonight you'll hear from the various directors, and I can give you a little bit of oversight as to where these changes have occurred. But I'm going to let most of the directors talk about their budgets. As you can see, general fund is by far the largest fund within the town. That's where all the municipal services are accounted for. Special revenue, that's where HERF would be included. Impact fees, grants, things like that would be included in that fund, and that's where you'll see, when Norm talks tonight, you'll see, and I'll give you a really brief overview of the HERF budget, where they took a major increase this year based on the things that Larry had just previously mentioned. Capital improvements is just 1/3 of a cent. The only thing we have in that capital improvements fund right now is the money we accumulate from the 1/3 of a cent to the sales tax, and so it goes to specific street projects. And then the enterprise funds, which are utilities, water and sewer funds, reclaimed water, recharge, things like that. Now this slide, I changed this slide a little bit from last year. I broke it down into it's the 5 main, 6 main expenditure categories for the town. Starting over on the far left, you can see personnel, and then operating, other capital, etc. The first 2, the red and the greenish color, that's actual expenditures. So that's what we've actually spent in fiscal year 13-14, 14-15. What you see in the teal color, purple color, that's our budget for the current fiscal year that we're in now. And then teal would be the blue would be what we're proposing. So as you can see in personnel services, it's gone up. It's going up again this year, 16, 17 compared to the previous years. And again, we're adding 13 positions this year overall, townwide. And I have some other examples of some of the reasons why personnel is going up. And I'll give those in a second here. Operating, again, has continued to increase over the years. We are looking at, in the general fund, at around a $2.2 million increase, which is really where the bulk of the money is. And I have a separate slide for that. Other is pretty much contingency and depreciation in the enterprise fund, so that's why you see it's very, very level. Capital, you can see the big jump between actual and budget. Again, we budget a lot of capital expenditures and grants, so that's why you see for the current fiscal year and proposed the large change over actuals. And again, the primary reason for that is we budget a lot of capital-related expenditures in grants, and then when we actually spend the money, then at that time we can have the budget to spend it, but if we don't, it just goes unused. So the end of the actual capital by the end of the year will be significantly less than what you see here. Debt service is pretty level, and then transfers is just how we move money from one fund to another. Number of authorized positions. This is kind of the last 10-year trend. You can see back in 2009, we had 262 positions. During a recession or downturn in the economy, we went down to 205. So that's kind of where we hit kind of rock bottom with staffing. Now, as you can see, since 2012, we've continued to add positions, a few here, a few there. But this year, you can see we took the largest jump that we've had in the previous years. Okay, I'll briefly talk about revenues. Again, this is revenues by fund. Our proposed revenue budget for this fiscal year is $70,340,102 compared to $61,711. The big increase, as I'll go here in a second, will be in the general fund. That's where we're going to see the largest amount of increase in our revenues over the previous years. And here's one example as to the reason why. This is our main revenue categories. Sales tax, you can see the huge jump in sales tax. Again, 13, 14, 14, 15 is actual revenues collected. In 15, 16, that's what our budget was. That does not include the 0.5 cent increase that went into effect January 1, so that's budget. Our actual amount that we're going to collect is going to be higher than what we budget, obviously. And then this year, we've included the 0.5 cent increase for the entire year. Intergovernmental, that's primarily our state share revenues. That includes HERF, vehicle license tax. All those items are included in there. These are preliminary numbers from the state. We still have not received any final numbers yet at this point. We thought we were going to get it, actually Monday, we thought we were going to get our final numbers. But I guess a few things happened down in the House and Senate, and now they have not come to an agreement on the distribution of state share revenues yet. So we're waiting for final numbers. We don't think they're going to change much. At least we're hoping they don't change much. But the slight increase you see there is based on population. Our population is growing, and that's being reflected in our state share revenues. And going forward, you'll always see state share revenues will be calculated based on what the census says our population is compared to the state totals. So we'll always see adjustments to our state share revenues going forward. Last one I would want to talk about is the draw on cash reserves. You can see that last year, or in the current fiscal year, we're at $13.9 million. We had to basically use of fund balance, cash reserves, in order to balance our budget. This year, it's a little bit less. We are at $11.9 million. and I'll have a slide here in a second to go over. But so this one is what we're in, as we talked a few weeks ago about the home rule, where you have to have a balanced budget. Doesn't necessarily mean that revenues equal expenditures. It's revenues and current fund balance must be equal to or greater than proposed expenditures. So this is what we need to balance our budget. So this is the changes in our cash balances, and this is only the governmental funds. I've excluded enterprise funds because they include depreciation, and it so it's kind of misleading. So in a general fund, we are looking at actually increasing our fund balance cash reserves by a little over $800,000 this year. Special revenues, we're going to be using $3.3 million of our cash reserves, and that's probably $3.2 million of that is with impact fees. We have 2 large projects, impact fee projects, that are included in the budget that Kim will talk about tomorrow, is the reason why it's drawing down those fund balances. And then capital improvement funds, again, that's 1/3 of a cent. So we're looking at a fairly large 1/3 of a cent street project, again, that either Kim or Norm will discuss either tonight or tomorrow, but that's the reason for the decrease in our cash balances. But this is money that we have in our bank, that we don't have to go out and issue bonds to try to fund everything. We're cash funding these projects. So now let's briefly hit some of the general fund, a couple of the main funds, and then I'll turn it back over to Larry. Here's the revenues by category. Again, I'm going to go back to numbers chart for the general fund. You can see that I'm showing what we budgeted for this fiscal year, the current fiscal year we're in, and then I'm showing what my projections are. So as you can see in the local sales tax, the projection is 15.2 million is what I'm anticipating we're going to collect from sales tax. And that includes 4 months worth of the TPT at the increased rate. Compared to this year, where I'm at 18.4 million, that's a 0.5 cent increase for the entire year. So that's why you see that difference between the 2 numbers. Now, the increase is over prior year budget, not projection. So if you see $5 million, you see the $5 million increase, that's related to my proposed budget compared to last year's previous budget. So there is growth. There was growth in this year's money, and then there's also going to be the 0.5 cent increase on top of that. Now, when I'm preparing the budget for the TPT increase, I'm looking at a 3% increase is what I'm projecting for next year, then adding a 0.5 cent increase on top of that to come up with the $18.4 million. Intergovernmental revenues, again, that's the other large main category. Again, you can see we have $12.4 million, or 13.5 this year. Again, probably 12 million of that is still to be undecided at this point. So I'm hoping within the next week or 2 or before we adopt the tentative budget, I'll have some better ideas as to if we're going to see any dramatic changes in our state share revenue numbers. All the other ones is kind of reflecting small increases. This one has expenditures by fund. And again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time because we got a lot of the department heads, directors here that will speak about their budgets, which is incorporated into this summary. But the one, personnel services, one of the areas that may not be talked about in great detail. You can see we have a approximately $3 million increase in general fund personnel services. Personnel services includes not only salaries, but it also includes all benefits. So this year we are looking at adding 13 positions to the budget. We have a budgeted merit increase of 3%, a general wage increase of 2%, and then also we have a mandatory 23.6% increase to the police public safety that we received about 2 months ago. So our contribution to the Public Safety Retirement Fund is going up by 23.55%. Last year last year I think it was 25.3%. So again, we're seeing some significant increases to try to offset these outstanding liabilities, future liabilities that will become due as police officers retire. Let's see, operating expenses, you can see a 10% increase. And as you look at the various budgets, there's a couple departments that really have had some significant increases in their budgets. So it'll be pretty noticeable when we see those departments, which ones they are. And actually, I got a slide here in a second that'll kind of indicate who some of them are. Capital expenditures, again, Kim is going to talk about this, but we have a few. You can see we have about $700,000 worth of increase in our capital projects expenses. A lot of those are actually placeholders that are currently right now that we budgeted for, just in case that something comes up, we can use the money. So $750,000 approximately of that is actually placeholder money to be used at a future time. And then the transfers, again, this is how we move money from one fund to another. You can see the big $2 million increase in transfers. That's how we're going to be transferring money from the general fund to HERF to cover for all of the street maintenance that Norm is going to be doing in the HERF budget. Expenditures by department. You can see some of the large increases in the department. Diane 1 leads the way with a 119% increase over a prior year. She gets the prize, so she'll explain the reason why. It's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Very good reason why it's so large. Police department is right around 10%, and then non-departmental 48%. Part of that, the bulk of that, and I don't want to take away from Larry's discussion about non-departmental, but the bulk of that is the $2 million. That's where our transfers to other funds are included, and a placeholder for some capital projects. So that's where the bulk of that is. And we're seeing, since we're seeing growth in our TPT, the amount of money that we're paying per our development agreements are also increasing. So you see a slight increase in our development agreements, reimbursements for the year. HERF fund, pretty much the main category, main revenue source is HERF. Again, this is another revenue stream through the state that we have not received final numbers on. So we're not 100% sure if this is going to be the most accurate. We've heard some discussions about a one-time, catch up of $150,000 that we may receive, but nothing has been finalized yet. So we're hoping that at the end of next fiscal year, instead of 3.4 or 3.2 million, we'll get 3.4 or 3.5 million instead. But at this point, we're just not sure. So I'm basing it on the most current estimates that we have from the state. And then you can see a transfer from the general fund of $2 million. So that's why their budget jumped, the revenue budget jumped by 70%. Expenditures, again, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about expenditures other than you can see the increase of 52%. Again, Norm will be talking here in a little bit about the HERF budget. Enterprise funds, the revenues, 4% increase over prior year. This is just based on just collections. We have not built into any type of rate increase into this. We're actually just in the process of reviewing the rate study that we do every year. So later in the year, depending on when we get all the information together, we'll be coming before council to talk about the results of our water and sewer rate study. So this really does not include any rate increases. All it is based on is basically current trends that we see in our collections at this point. And then connection charges is based on what we anticipate the number of homes that are going to be, permits that are going to be submitted next fiscal year. Expenses by category, overall you can see a very minor increase. Even if you take out the transfers, you're looking at about a 2-3% increase in the utility funds, so very, very small increase. Again, Neil and John will be coming up here tomorrow to talk about the utility budgets in more detail. So with that, I just want to let you know we have 2 dates coming forward. May 19th, with Council's blessing, I will be coming before Council to get the approval of the tentative budget. So any changes that occur in the next tonight and tomorrow night will be incorporated and then be submitted as part of the approval for the tentative budget on the 19th. And then after that, we'll have a public hearing and approval of the budget on the 23rd of June. So with that, I'll try to answer any questions or comments that council might
Questions?
have.
All right, Mary?
I just wanted to ask, Larry had mentioned about that we have 5 employees per 1,000 citizens, correct? So with the increase of our employees, did that count? Was that count for? That's the new.
That's the new number divided into 43,000 citizens. As the population continues to grow, certainly we will have more need
Right.
to have employees to serve those citizens. But 5 employees per 1,000 is record-setting in
Yes.
terms of other municipalities' levels of efficiency. And so we're very proud of that. And that's our goal, is not to exceed that.
Right. Thank you.
Any other comments, Mike?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I didn't jot down everything I was hoping to. You mentioned in personnel we're adding 13 positions, and then as far as the budget's concerned, 2% goes to wage increases. What's the 3% again for?
There's a 2% general wage, like a
Right.
COLA at the
Yep.
beginning of the
Okay,
year,
that's
and then
the
there's
COLA.
a budgeted
Okay.
merit. So at the performance, your annual review is up. It's a 3% budgeted
3%.
increase at that time.
Okay.
Well, and it's very important to understand that that is a merit increase, and if somebody is not performing well, as according to their appraisal, they may get 0, they may get 1%, 2%, but we budgeted a 3% average for the employee base. If somebody ends up after their evaluation period and only has 1% on there, they better start thinking very seriously about the job they're doing or not doing.
Oh, I think that's reasonable. The other thing I was wondering about is you mentioned in the eyes of the state that revenue plus the fund balance equals to create that balanced budget situation. What is it compared to again?
Well, as part of the home rule,
Right.
basically the budget is adopted by council, but we're required to have a balanced budget per state statute.
Right.
So basically, most people would think that means revenues must equal
Right.
expenditures.
Right.
But we're allowed to use cash reserves to balance our budget. So
Okay.
we always have to make sure that you have adequate cash reserves to add to your current year revenues, and that must equal or exceed what we're proposing to be spent.
Okay. I got it.
So we can never overspend what we have.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Good question. Any other questions, anyone? Thank you, Bill. There are no more questions. We move on to number B, Council, page 6-3. Larry?
Hello, Mayor and Council. If you would, please turn to page 6-3 in your budget book. And what you will find is the council budget. Now, what I would ask you to do, if you want, and that is going back to Bill's presentation, if you turn to page 5, and it's the display labeled expenditures by department. Okay, that's in Bill's handout. Expenditures by department. I would ask that you take a look at the far right-hand column, because the directive to all of the departments was to increase their operating expenses no greater than 3%. And our department heads did a fantastic job. Where you see a number that exceeds 3%, certainly go ahead and grill that department head and say, hey, what's going on? 3% was the limit. And you take a look at one department, 119%. I think that somebody's feet need to be held to the fire, but that I leave that to you. But we work very hard on these numbers with zero-based budgeting practices to make sure that we're getting everything that we need out of every dollar that we are gathering from our citizens. Now, to that point, going back to the budget book 6.3, we're looking at the town council budget. Your budget increased by 2%, essentially. Okay, so we held the line on everything. Essentially, there was an increase in the League of Cities dues. That's reflected in here. And other than that, there's really not much change to town council's budget. And we held the line on expenditures, and we thought that you would appreciate that. Do you have any questions on the town council budget?
Questions, anyone? Laura?
I thought we were going to include costs to go to the governors.
I couldn't hear that. I'm sorry.
Well, remember we used to go to 2 state meetings. One of them was the League of Cities and Towns, and the other was the Governor's Economic Development. So,
or some other.
Or some other.
We
exactly.
have some flexibility in this, but we did not make a giant leap in out-of-town expenditures this year. Okay, we were holding the line so that we could keep that under 3%, so that you could set the same example as all the other departments.
As it should be.
Okay.
Any other questions? Comments? Anything else, Larry?
That's it.
If not, let's move on to E, Community Development, page 6-57.
Actually, if Mr. Mayor, if we could go to the executive management and
Oh, you want to do that one first? Okay.
if I could, please.
We'll go through that. That's on page 6-7 and 6-207.
Okay, now looking at Bill's chart, executive management, once again, we're using that 3% increase as a yardstick. Oh my goodness, executive management went down 4.7%. Gee, okay, once again, watching our expenditures very closely and going down by 4%. I think that department head ought to be given a pat on the back. Well done. Now, having said that wasn't self-serving, was it? Okay, by turning, get out of here, Diane. By turning to page 6-7, you'll see that executive management, we essentially are doing the same thing in the new fiscal year without expansions in programming, and we're just going to concentrate on doing what we do better without spending and spending less money doing it. Okay, so you will remember that includes, hosting the Citizens Academy, that hosts the community relations person, Heidi Foster, all of her social media efforts. That includes all of her volunteer efforts. That group also includes water resources and includes economic development, which, by the way, I apologize in advance. I'm going to have to leave to go take Greg's place up at the Citizens Academy at 7 o'clock. That search is going forward. We are looking at another round of interviews coming up fairly soon. We're waiting for responses to some pre-planned questions that we sent out to the next round of candidates. We're being picky. We had one round of interviews and rejected those and are fishing more. So, are there any questions on executive management? You also know that is our television channel is in one of the categories, as well as capital improvements with Kim Moon.
Questions, anyone? Nope. No, anything else, Larry?
Actually, if we could, Mr. Mayor, if we could go to E, which is stepping out of the cadence here so that I can make sure I get upstairs. And what that department is community development.
657 is the page.
Actually, we do need to back up to non-departmental, which is on page 6-207. That was under executive management. 6-207.
Okay.
What you'll notice, and we have had a long practice of having our development agreements in non-departmental. That's a lion's share of these expenditures. And so when we have a development agreement, for example, where there is a sales tax reimbursement, say, for example, at Crossroads, this is where Bill puts those numbers. In addition to that, you'll see the emergency services agreement, the CASA agreement, and one thing that is of interest to a great many people is the YMCA and working with the Y to get them to come out here with their programming and capital improvement. You will note that we have some dollars in there that we have joined with the YMCA on a feasibility study, and they're paying 50%, and we're contributing to that effort because at your direction, there's a high interest in additional programming for those recreational services out here in Prescott Valley. You'll also see the PVEDF agreement, Chamber of Commerce agreement, and the GPREP agreement is in non-departmental. We're continuing at your direction to contribute to prevent child abuse and also trauma intervention services. And I will point out to you that you gave directive back in 2004 to go ahead and assist only those agencies that are listed here that you see outlined in line items 3180 down, well, it's 3180 and there's several. If you'll recall, back in 2004, you had a very long list, and there were expenditures well in excess of $100,000, and you directed staff to eliminate that, with the notable exception of TIP, CASA, and trauma intervention. And that was accomplished. Okay, is there any question on non-departmental?
Questions, anyone? I think it's pretty clear, Larry.
Okay, very good. With that in mind, then, Mr. Mayor, if we could look at community development. That would be page 6-57. Now, normally, you would not see me commenting on community development because all of the bloodletting had happened about 3 months ago. Now, with that in mind, Richard Parker is unable to join us this evening for a reason that many of you are aware of. And so he sent his very capable assistant, which I do believe is actually the prime mover in that department, Vicki. And she's sitting there hoping that you will not call on her. So I just thought I would point that out to you, that she really, really is allergic to microphones. Okay, but I did go ahead on Sunday and agree when Richard informed all of us that he was going to be unable to be here this evening, that we would take a look at his budget. Now, one thing, going back to the 3% standard, one thing that I will compliment Richard on, as well as many of our department heads, is that he came in with a budget that was below 3%. But because Bill made some adjustments to it, it is reflected here at 4.9%. And so to that end, I'm going to defend Richard, who came in with the 3%. But I do believe Bill might want to comment on that. But nevertheless, Richard and Community Development have done a good job coming in with a 3% budget. Just a couple items that are important to note. One is that there is in the budget a half a year salary for an additional building inspector. As the building permit activity continues to climb, if it continues and maintains the trajectory that it is today, then by January we're going to need an additional building inspector to handle the workload. Very admirably, the inspectors that we presently have ramped up. They're using technology and they're handling the workload, although it's getting close to that point where they're going to need some assistance. But we're going to see how the year evolves. In addition to that, one large expenditure that is contemplated by Community Development is a software program that is Richard and staff are still working on getting the other building departments in Yavapai County, including Yavapai County, to all embrace the same software package. What a concept. So if you're a builder and you're building in Chino Valley, Prescott, and Prescott Valley, you're using the same database. You're using the same information. It makes it seamless and transparent throughout the Yavapai County. But he's still working on that. And so we've got money in here to go ahead and take the next step, but we're working very hard to go ahead and get the cooperation of all the other entities. Regardless of that, if we end up going alone on this, then what is going to be proposed is that there would be a slight increase to the building fees to where the builders would end up paying for this new technology because they're going to be the beneficiaries of it. But that jury is still out, and Richard and his very capable staff are still working on that, and it's an admirable goal. Vicki, do you have any comment on that?
Vicki, 20 minutes. You
Yeah,
don't have to
need to
use
come to the microphone.
Vicki.
Actually, you've touched on it pretty well. We're trying to implement a technology fee if it goes that direction to Excel automation, it's called, where all the jurisdiction would get together, and hopefully with the Yavapai County being, it's called a super agency, and then we would all be filtered through them, and they would kind of take care of the software and the technology of that. But again, our current system that we're on is called Permits Plus, is not any longer being supported by Microsoft, so we need to move in another direction and convert all of our programs over. And this is the best, and that's being used by many jurisdictions right now. So that's what our hope is.
Good. Any questions? Laura?
I just hope that the other communities are as forward-thinking as we are. That's a concern of mine.
Well, I think we have pretty good buy-in from Yavapai County. They're
Good,
yeah.
because the others might follow.
And
that.
Chino Valley, Prescott's been kind of in and out, so we're not really sure on that. But regardless of how many, we really need to move forward. So.
Thanks, Vicki.
Mary?
So is it under 3%, or is it the 4.94% for community development on
It's
that?
actually 2.7. I'm sticking with that.
Yeah, the number that
That's
was...
my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah,
No, Bill added $50,000 for credit card fees because a lot of credit cards are run through our front counter that actually goes through their department. So,
Okay.
Yeah, I have to compliment ComDev in that this is the 13th year in a row that when given a number for operational increases, they have met or come in under that number for 13 years in a row. And hats off to them for doing that. They're not the only department, but nevertheless, they've done a really good job of that. But after the fact, after they had presented the budget, we all know, and if people that are watching this don't know, when you use a credit card, the vendor ends up paying a fee.
Right.
And oftentimes, and Bill, isn't it based on the actual cost of the transaction or the dollar amount of the transaction? Okay, now put this in mind. When you go to the store and you buy something for $10 and use credit card, okay, that store is paying a fee, and it's based on the $10. Well, when a contractor comes in and purchases a permit that's costing them, what's a number?
$1,200.
Yeah, when they're dealing with big numbers and they're dealing with that all day long, the transaction fee that the credit card companies use is high, and that number is going up, and so that's why they have a bigger number on their budget.
Okay.
Any other questions, Mary? Anyone else?
No, sir.
Stephen, no? Vicky, you still got 19 minutes. Okay, well, thank you, Vicky. Anything else you want to add to it, Larry?
I sure don't, and so with that in mind, I'll bet you that Stuart's just chomping at the bit.
Well, we go then to Stuart, library, page 6-119. You're up, Stuart.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I do want to introduce, I don't know if you know, Tess Willis is the library's administrative assistant, and she will hand out, I had to change the terminology, the traditional budget tokens. So Tess will hand them out, and I hope you enjoy them for the rest of your evening. I really had written down to thank Bill for all this work because it's really impressive, but then he slammed me, so now I don't know if I really want to do that. I want you to know Charlotte Bradford
said something about, what, 10-year department heads?
The ones that have been here longer are the hardest to deal with, is what I thought
Something
he
like
was
that,
saying.
yeah.
But anyway, it's impressive, and I know Lee puts a lot of work into it. I think Charlotte is here from the board, and I think Larry may have joined us.
Thank you.
So basically, I just want to go over some the figures you see there on the page 6-121. The first 75,604. That's really impressive, and it's intra and interlibrary loans, but it's mainly intra, which means we're the borrowing and the loaning from within the network, which is we're very proud of our network, our consortium. And the door count, which continually goes up, especially January through April when AARP are here, and they had a very successful year from what I was told. Patron internet is still an extremely busy area for the public, and I think it's really important because most of these people, a lot of them are daily, but most of them come in to get whatever they need done on our computers and be able to print and so on and so forth. Circulation is amazing to me, almost 500,000, 432,000. Another figure that I thought is important, this program attendance. The staff has done such a tremendous job with programming, and the grant that Michelle and Megan wrote that you've probably been aware of some of the folklorio. I'm sure you all went to the belly dancing then. And but some of these programs have filled the auditorium, which is just a tremendous thing, and they deserve a lot of credit. Volunteer hours is still very impressive. We couldn't do what we do without the volunteer hours. And then I thought it was interesting, the average circulation per hour is 149. Now that's with Laura Lee's help in all the things that she checks out. Oh, and Ryan Judy, he's not here. Thank you, and you all know Casey, of course. There's been a lot of media coverage of what's going on in Prescott and what's going on with the pass-through funds from the county library. Our pass-through funds will be staying the same as it has been, very little change. And so it's a wonderful, they're very helpful in their support beyond the pass-through funds. As far as in the facilities budget of the library, I'm very proud of what they've done. We're saving a lot of money on electricity with the LED lights that they've replaced. It's been very, very, very helpful. The 3% we sort of park it. We park it and evaluate. We have some areas that we are underfunded, that we need to make sure we are able to cover that. Some of that will, in the future, will be CenturyLink, which I'm still waiting for. We're still waiting for CenturyLink. You know, I've mentioned that we're trying to get a different provider for the public internet because we've had issues, and that will be refunded back, as I've mentioned, 80%, but I still will have that 20% to try to cover this next fiscal year. But what we try to do continually, and I'm still doing it even to this day, I look at the budget, I look at the lines that are complete. Like, for example, Casey Danner's lines for paying all the maintenance charges. If there's money left over, we try to move it into buying more materials. And that's our goal. But as we get closer to the end of the fiscal year, that gets more difficult because, of course, the item, if it's a hardback book, has to be in our possession by a certain date. So what we tend to do towards the end of the fiscal year is we'll buy electronic books because they're like instant overdrive. So that's kind of what we've done with the 3%. Any other questions?
Questions, anyone? Mary?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Stuart, I may have not heard. So you said the 3%, but I'm looking at 4.93%.
Well, it's what
so I probably didn't hear something.
Well, you did. I saw that on that letter, which I hadn't realized, and it mentions that there's money placed for grants, which, by the way, Casey and Michelle also just heard Monday that they each received a grant that will be coming before you. So my understanding is, and I think, am I correct, is that change from the 3% is the money that was placed for grants.
Roast him. Roast him. That number is greater than 3. No, actually...
he got a gift, so he probably meant...
He's responsible for you.
Yeah, they're very similar to community development. They came in with a 3% number, or it was slightly less, but we added to it for some grants and also for credit card transactions. So they did their job, and then Bill made the modifications that make him look worse than what he really is.
And loved every minute of it, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely did.
So we pretty much have, like, the credit card fees are pretty much an additive to every department. Well, not every department, but definitely community.
To some.
Yeah, to some.
Absolutely to some.
People that, are actually serving.
Water utility, for example.
Right, I remember that one.
Water and sewer, and they're sharing that cost.
Right.
Because typically, their bill comes in together on
right.
that. And one thing that we resisted was there was some comment about actually adding a cost if you did a credit card transaction. Bad idea.
Yeah, we don't.
You build it into the total cost of the operation of a water department or of a library, because there are other benefits in terms of paper processing, certainly, or the elimination of paper processing by using plastic. It's much better, quite frankly, but there is a cost. And so it is reflected in these individual budgets.
Which I'm glad, because you could imagine for the library, most of the charges are not a great amount. I mean, they are doing some for the collection agency, perhaps, but it's fines, maybe $20, maybe not even that. My point is not a large amount.
Okay, and I had another.
Was it yours that made a noise?
No,
it was me.
It was what? It was his. Yeah. Are we done with your department now?
If you
no?
say so.
No. I had another question. That's why I didn't know. I might be getting ahead of the program. So, are we going to be able to be open on Sunday? Did we discuss that, or was that something we're
I'll
not?
defer back to Larry.
Is that going?
We're not this year.
Okay.
That was one thing that was brought up in the retreat.
Right.
But with other expenses and needs,
Okay.
that was a service expansion that we didn't go down that path. Stuart ran the numbers, and it was, I'm going to say, pretty expensive.
Okay.
For a half day on
Right.
a Sunday. And so as we go forward in additional retreats, that's something that we can evaluate, certainly, and see where we can go with that.
Okay. Thank you very
And
much.
it really will be needed also. So
yeah, I believe as the community grows, yes.
Any other questions? Laura?
I do. It's not a budgetary question, but I want to know how our audiovisual room is doing. Are we getting an uptick in?
That's why she's here.
Yeah.
Our digital media lab, yes, we received funds from North Central University, and we had instructors, and this year has been the biggest usage of the room. We have people weekly. We have a doctor who comes in every Thursday to record videos about health awareness, so that's really awesome. We really are seeing a huge uptake in the use of that room.
Well, I know how hard you worked on that, and I'm just delighted to hear that there's an uptick in usage. It'll only get bigger and better because
Yes.
you invested so much in it, and I just want to acknowledge you for that.
And what's also awesome is Stuart had discussed the grants that we received. Can I talk about that? Yeah, well, I'm going to do it anyway. We received grant funds for a business hub or incubator here at the Prescott Valley Public Library. So the Digital Media Lab and the business hub will work together and we also got a 3D printer, which is going to be fabulous usage. So between the Peak Business Experience Hub and the Digital Media Lab, they will work together to really form a great opportunity for our community.
A couple of things, where this business hub, we had a meeting with Larry and Karen the other day. He hadn't been in this new room, calling it the Glassford Hill Meeting Room, but it's next to the bookstore, and if you haven't had a chance, try to get in there. We've got several things that we want to do. And before Laura Lee, if the board members want to come up and have any discussion about the budget, you're welcome to do so. Go ahead, Laura Lee, I'm sorry.
When NACOG was here last week, I really wanted to utilize that room, but for the meetings, they were executive sessions, and of course, I couldn't because we haven't been able to enclose them in any way. Do we have any plan to do anything of that in the future?
You bet. In fact, Larry came up with some ideas that we're going to investigate that are at one of the clubhouses in the developments. Even this morning, I was talking to Josh, the facilities person. That was before Larry's idea about to do something. Maybe they could do it in-house. It needs to be done because we've also had some people in there, and we didn't know how it's going to go, the noise, and so the meetings were in there, and it was impacting the desk a bit.
Right. I want you to know that I just smiled hugely at all the compliments for all the people from NACOG last week that had never been here, and I even ended up doing a tour of the library, and I just smile from ear to ear when I get to do that.
We're still getting the wow factor.
Yes, sir, we are.
I mean, I won't go down where they aren't going to get the wow factor, but we'll fix that, I hope.
Yes, we will. We will.
And I think Corey is here also. Do anybody want to come and talk about the budget? Thank you, Corey.
Yeah, thank you.
That didn't work. What do you want to try next?
Nice try, Corey.
I had a question about your grant. What's the size of the grant, or what was the amount?
Originally, I had asked for $29,000, which would have involved more of an enclosure and blackout curtains for that room because it is very sunny, and a LED smart TV projector type system. But they only awarded us $13,100.
Great.
So, but it's still enough for, and it's a collaboration with NAU Yavapai and the Small Business Development Center. They're our partners in this grant, so they'll be providing classes and workshops for the small business community here.
Right. Great.
Oh yeah, and then Michelle has an Oasis grant, which is for digital literacy for adults, teaching them computer skills, job searching skills. So both grants, we're really, really excited to get going here.
Do you know the value of that grant?
I think hers was just under $10,000.
Oh, okay. Well, great job. Yep.
Mary, you had a question?
Oh, I just want to thank all of you for coming. I love the interest and the sincere community effort that everybody puts in for the library. You guys are great, So I appreciate it. You do a good job.
And
Thank you. And thank you for the gifts. I like that.
I was going to say, well, they didn't get any gifts, so I'm sure that's going to come up at the next trustee meeting.
Okay. and get all my numbers in order.
I hope that didn't blow your budget. Any other questions, comments? Casey, I've still got 19 minutes.
What else can I say? I can do a short
Okay.
comment.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Stuart, good job, and thank you all for coming.
I didn't think.
Okay, now we'll move on to Parks and Recreation, page 6-83, Brian Whitty.
See anything.
Mayor,
We're
Yeah,
excited,
excuse me.
Brian.
while he's coming up, I just wanted to mention that all of those comments about the different departments and going over the budget are indicated in the introduction in Chapter 1. It specifically explains each of those issues. So if you have questions, you can just refer back to the introduction.
But it's still a lot of fun to go after those that came in at 119% over.
I don't think anybody can explain that.
Congratulations.
Okay, Brian, you're up.
Well, thank you, Mayor and Council, for your time this evening. Basically, just a quick review in regards to our current fiscal year that we're in and shouting some of the accolades in which this department and its staff has done during that time frame. Very excited that our achievements as it relates to Tree City USA, the Growth Award, and also our Playful City USA recognition continues on a positive trend. We received nearly $12,000 in contributions and cash donations from the Prescott Valley Parks and Recreation Foundation for work at American Legion Park. Growth in regards to staffing with our recreation coordinator and our parks maintenance technicians and bringing them up to flush. In the future, the presentation for the park development guidelines as it relates to park construction. Very successful art studio tour was hosted here, serving a number of different artists within our community that otherwise would not have participated in the Regional Mountain Artists Guild program. The entertainment schedule at the renovated amphitheater for Theater on the Green, its performances out there, and the number of other performances that have been hosted by the general public and their participation there. This year we're successful in receiving nearly $4,000 in contribution to our Movies Under the Stars program. An $18,000 grant was received from the Forestry Division, Arizona Division of Forestry, via the Community Challenge grants for park inventories. A $28,000 Arizona Game and Fish Heritage grant was received for developments and at enhancements at Fane Park. Playground installation took place at Antelope Park, compliments of a North Central University donation. A softball tournament was held with an estimated impact of $550,000. This was done in partnership with the City of Prescott. And then lastly, a 3-day dog show was held with 863 entries, with 35% of those attending outside of the state of Arizona. So those are rather successful accomplishments within this fiscal year, and I think it has served our community well in a variety of different ways, and especially from the standpoint of economic development. With that being said, our fiscal year in 16-17, we're very excited about that. But as it relates to fiscal impacts, which is our discussion for this evening, our department is requesting an increase of $28,000. This is being broken amongst the various divisions, largely of which will reside within our Parks Division. This will allow us to handle other repairs that are related to an increase in vandalism, cleaning supplies and shop supplies in support of the numerous public events that are being held on town property, in addition to those tournaments that are being cooperatively developed. And the largest component of the entire budget relates to landscape materials for the Parks Division to continue our efforts as it relates to deferred maintenance over the last few years. Additional increases will be found in our special events division. This relates to our 20th anniversary of our 4th of July celebration. It's hard to believe that that's been 20 years in doing such, as well as then a modest increase for Battle of the Bands because we've held them at bay for over a decade now in regards to their services. Those are the numbers as it relates to our operating budget. From a capital development standpoint, as you're well aware of, Mr. Judy has been working very hard on our behalf on a CDGB grant as it relates to the expansion of our Boys and Girls Club facility in Mountain Valley Park. We are aiming for the utilization of development impact fees of $1.5 million in the development of Bob Edwards Park that we've had plan sets ready to go since 2008. I think we're about at that time. We're ready to move forward on that project. In regards to capital equipment for the department, we have a new motor and pump for Mountain Valley Splash, a holding plate for Art at the Center, Fane Lake waterfall pump, a Stone Park playground replacement, auction vehicles, a first aid facility at Mountain Valley Splash, and then phase 2 of sidewalk repair for the urban lakes at Mountain Valley Park. So in total, that is the request that we have for the department that are being presented to you tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have on any of those one projects or any division within the department.
Question, Marty?
I don't have a question. I just want to let you know that I'm still working on trying to get that handball court.
Excellent.
I have someone else working on it, so I might be getting it after all.
Good deal, and I thank you for that.
Laura?
I wanted to give you a heads up that on Sunday, I met with pickleball enthusiasts, their club, and it was very exciting. They are really dynamic people.
They are.
They really are. So, and then I wanted to ask you about the possible implementation of the Splash and Dash. Tell us a little bit about that, because I just think it's a fantastic potential event, and I compliment you.
Yes. What we're looking at trying to do is utilize a number of our different town assets, really as it revolves around the multi-use pass, as well as then also our pass within Mountain Valley Park, and incorporating them with Mountain Valley Splash in doing so. So it could be a phased process of not only just a 5K, but also a 10K. And and then of course the running elements of that, and then incorporating the swimming and utilizing the pool. And so that would be a regional outreach for that event, and again about attracting folks, overnight stays, all of those kinds of activities.
And I also want to comment so that everyone here knows we finally have every seat filled on the Arts and Culture Commission.
I was very excited to receive that notice today, as well as also the Parks and Recreation
And the
Commission.
Parks and Rec, yes,
Yes,
both
ma'am.
of them for the first. That is so positive to have that, all of those seats filled. And those of us who are privileged to interview these people, we know how excited and enthused they are. So we can't hardly wait to get to share that with these newly appointed people.
This will be excellent timing.
Mary, you got a comment?
Well, we just have some new people that are in the community, right, Laura? And it's great to have some new people join in and get on these boards and really take, some interest and some action into the community and see how it all goes and how much fun we have here in Prescott Valley. We thank you, Brian. You do a fabulous job.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
Good. Mike?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I think one of my priorities is, as you mentioned, the deferred, maintenance on the parks in terms of landscaping materials. And we've had a little input here and there from the community, but I think it's important that, as I've always felt, that the parks are really a face of the community and of the town of Prescott Valley. And if anything, I think that's a priority for us, is to focus on how we can enhance the parks with landscape materials. So, we don't have any issues relative to how the park's used, because it may not be in a condition that's conducive to a certain use. So I'm looking forward to whatever that might be when it's implemented, and hopefully we can contribute more towards that cause in the near future as well.
I appreciate that. And you have at this point in time as well in doing that. Don't forget, we had Antelope Playground that came on board the year before, Tonto. So we're looking at that infrastructure, going through its replacement and schedule. This year, if approved, we'll be looking at the facility over in Stone Ridge. And then as you look through the 5-year and beyond capital planning, there's more and more of that type of thing to enhance that infrastructure and continue to put on that positive interaction for the community.
Mayor?
Yeah, Laura?
I forgot to tell you this when I was speaking before, but last week when I did that art tour, I had more people than I expected, so you know. But one of them was County Supervisor Tom Thurman.
Yes.
And when we got done with the tour, he pulled me aside and he said, "Why don't you advertise all of this more?" I had no idea. And I was delighted to say that he was duly impressed and very, very complimentary. And I thought, well, we've invited you lots of times.
Yes, ma'am. That is correct. And I think our goal is always to improve our outreach in doing that. We have a very positive interaction with Heidi Foster, our communications and marketing lady. She's doing a fantastic job and really helping us move the bar upwards in doing that. And so I'm glad Tom was enthralled with what we had. I apologize I could not be there that particular evening.
Citizens Academy called.
Yes, ma'am, it did. And it also would have been nice to inform him, and I apologize because I don't think that I've been able to inform you up until this point in time. We received nearly $20,000 of donated artwork to the program this year. They were actually continuing artists that strongly requested that they continue and actually had served with us for a 3-year period of time. And at the conclusion of their term, we notified them and they said, you know what, we think so much of your community and your program that we want you to keep these works. And so we've been very fortunate to do such, and as part of that program's vision, we've moved it out into the community. So we have a piece at Viewpoint Park and a piece at Pronghorn Park now. So that program is reaching out and directly engaging.
I also, for the tour, I included the brochures about art at the center, and they hadn't had time to look at them, of course, because we were busy. But 2 of the representatives' communities were very excited, and they were going to take that idea back to their communities. So I was so glad that you had those brochures that I could give them. So they are used.
Yes, ma'am, they are. Thank you.
Good. Any other questions, comments? Anything else, Brian?
No, sir.
Okay. There be no more on that. We'll go on to G, Magistrate, page 6-137. Judge Carson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. It's always a pleasure to come here, but I usually have just the same budget, more or less, year after year. I was thinking, what should I say? And mine is a little different than most. It's not as large of a budget as many. It's not perhaps as exciting in some ways as Park and Rec, but it is exciting in regard to the people I deal with. A lot of people end up finally having a light go on in their head, and they finally start doing the counseling. They start paying. They actually then start becoming a better citizen, and all that is very exciting to me to actually see that when it occurs. So mine is exciting in different ways than you might view other departments. So is there any questions you have regarding the budget? Or
any questions, anyone?
No, you do a great job, Judge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you remember everything we've said to you all these years? Ditto.
Thank you.
Any special comments? Anything special we should look for? Is there?
Nothing in particular. Larry needs to become a better ping pong player. Other than that, no, that's outside of my budget. I haven't got time. I see. All right. Anything else?
Well, I might as well ask a comment. I'm wondering in terms of the changes we saw in the last couple of years, and relative to your day-to-day activity, is that pretty much stable, or is there certain times of the year where you see a peak versus a valley?
It's actually can be done on a shorter basis than that. Weather will affect. We have inclement weather, I have less people show up. We have good weather, more people get in trouble, more people show up. There certainly are variances based on the different times and holidays of the years, but I don't have anything charted out to kind of address that. From my standpoint, whatever it is, that's what I deal with, and come to work every day ready to deal with whatever that may be. So it's in many ways enjoyable, sometimes frustrating to see the people that just basically are throwing away their lives, in my view, and then I can only hope that at some point in time they have a light bulb that in the future will go on. And sometimes it's actually many years later, but I finally then deal with the people long enough, and then finally it's like, wow, these people have turned around. There's people that don't have driver's license. Most of us would say, we got a driver's license, and in some ways take that in many ways for granted. Just today, and oftentimes I will give somebody an opportunity to fix the problem of why they have a suspended or revoked license. They're able to do it within the time frame I give them, and they come in and I tell them congratulations. They say thank you. Because, and one person I remember says, I've never had a driver's license. And they were all excited about it, and I complimented them and viewed it, and they viewed it as the reward it was intended when I said congratulations for accomplishing that. So, those are kind of exciting things that I can see, and on a frequent basis, but I'd like to see it even more. But
Nothing to do with the full moon, right?
that I haven't been able necessarily, though I do have a clerk that mentions that. She said there was a full moon, and therefore that's why. But again, I haven't been able to totally verify that as well.
Have you issued as many warrants, or is that pretty much steady as well?
Because we've been able to spend more time addressing and issuing what's called order to show cause, come into court on a specific date to show cause why I shouldn't find you in contempt of court, and either give you jail for not paying or not doing counseling or not doing community restitution. The people that do not show up get more warrants, or get a warrant issued against them. So because we've been able to spend more time on order to show causes, warrants have in fact gone up. Not sure if we plateaued yet. I think we probably have about 1,500 or in that ballpark outstanding warrants at this time.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Judge, appreciate that.
No.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Take care.
Okay, there won't
Have
be
a
no
good
more,
night.
Judge. We'll move on to H, Public Works and HERF, page 6, 143 and 7-5. Norm, you're up.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. It's a pleasure. Oh, you're going to time me? Well, I take everything I can get and usually spend it all. So it's a pleasure to present the Public Works budget tonight. I guess first off, I do want to point out Deanna Serino really leads the budget preparation for the Public Works Department. She makes me lazy at times, I guess, because she does such a good job. So keeping it in the 3%, Deanna handles, and couldn't do it without her. So she does a very good job there. I'm going to present tonight really first the general fund. That's what you're going to see in front of you. Of course, Public Works is made of the general fund, and also HERF is a big component, but I'll cover the general fund first. First and foremost, I wanted to point out was we are receiving in the budget a new staff position as a GIS technician in Public Works. May be well aware Larry Prentice is a department of one. Due to the downturn, he got to be a department of one, so he survived for quite a few years. I always want to point out, really with the growth that we're seeing, Larry Prentice really supports many other departments about as equally as he does Public Works, police department, Parks and Rec, utilities. So I guess what we're finding with technology, Larry does a lot of work all the time. He's doing new stuff for like the police department with, looking at how he can use his geographic information system, GIS, to, talk about crime hotspots and the like. So he serves all departments equally. All the inventories that he does. I know Parks and Rec, we've done a tree inventory. So we've enhanced the technology and our data record keeping significantly. So this particular GIS technician will free him up to do more of that, more of the, the science of figuring things out, and plus the data input this technician will do. So we're looking forward to having that particular position inserted in the budget this new coming year. Some of our annual contracts, I think council is well aware. Those outsourced contracts, we've got long-standing relationships with landscape and janitorial. That's why when Councilman Mallory, when you talked about the 5 particular staff members per 1,000 residents, that's where that comes from, a lot of that outsourcing. So you'll see us bring that to you here the latter part of this budget year for the renewals. So a big part of the Public Works budget is all the outsourcing we do. One of the finer things, I guess, it's always nice to talk about the capital improvements. Let's talk about what's out of the general fund. The Spouse Viewpoint intersection, that's about a $3.5 million improvement. That continues the Viewpoint extension up to the north. So we've got that intersection in this year's budget. Likewise, a very popular project that turned out to be the Glassford Long Look intersection. We're trying to scope that about this time next year when school gets out to give that substantial lanes. We're seeing a lot of congestion there, so that'll be some of the development impact fee funds. Likewise, the Viewpoint floodplain channelization, utilization of the flood control dollars we get to continue the Viewpoint corridor and some of the stormwater management planning. So we'll do the second phase of that project. Had a successful phase 1 complete this year. Another project that's a little newer is Sunset Lane. That's a partnership we want to do with Yavapai County. So basically between Pineview and Prescott East, we're going to start design for that particular project. So that's in the budget this year. Partnership with the county to get the design started, and a partnership of funding of splitting that, because basically that portion of Sunset is half in the county, half in incorporated town of Prescott Valley. So we're looking forward to starting that design. Likewise, we're going to start design of the Viewpoint extension across the state land section, so we have that ready for future years construction. So that's some of the capital we have planned. And got a couple grants that hopefully will come through. Of course, you're well aware that Ryan's been very successful with the community development block grants. They actually come out of Public Works because it's infrastructure improvements, but we have a Lake Valley community development block grant for some widening. I would like to think I was talking to Ryan today. He's been 5 for 5 getting those competitive grants, so I just go to expect it. So we'd like to think hopefully we can put that into place with a successful grant award here this summer. We'll hear. Another thing I want to point to council was not that it's in the particular budget, but the FEMA floodplain mapping update. We were successful with using some of our past investment in our GIS and mapping, that we were able to match that with some FEMA funding to redo all our floodplain maps of all our significant floodplains. So we're going to roll that out in the coming year with some mapping updates. So we'll keep council aware of that. But that's actually been $200,000 of improvement this past budget year. Implementation this year, it's a long process to make sure that new mapping updates to keep properties safe from the floodplain. I want to touch upon facilities a little bit. That's a big department that quietly takes care of business. No real big capital improvements, but point out some of what we're going to do. Going to reinvest in some of the capital of some HVAC, the air conditioning units. We're going to get one for the IT room. That one is getting old, and with all the computer upgrades we've done, that room gets hot real quick. So we've got an aging air conditioner unit we're going to upgrade there. And likewise, CASA. This year, I think council's aware that we replaced the stove and some of the freezers and refrigerators. So that was a nice investment. So this year in the budget, we have a new, we're going to start replacement of the air conditioning units. There's 3 of them, I believe, down there. They're in a variety of 25 years old. They're due, so they're a little haggard. So it'd be nice to replace that in a controlled environment and get that changed out. Likewise, painting of the building and the commercial water heater they have there. I was asking Josh, and he said it's about 30 years old. I said, don't they last about 10 years? He says, typically, this has been a good one, but we're going to replace that hot water heater in a controlled situation. So,
what's the brand?
So yes, that 30-year-old water heater, I guess it'll go to the antique auction, so we'll see from there. So likewise, some of the money-saving changes we do in facilities all the time is changing some of the existing incandescent and the high energy use fixtures to LED. So we've had a program to continually upgrade that, which saves us money in the end. So what we're going to do is some LED change out at CASA. Some of the particular lights they have, likewise, they're not made anymore. You can't buy the fluorescent tubes. So the new LEDs look very similar to fluorescent tubes, I understand, but they do require a fixture change out. So I thought the same thing, Councilman Whiting. I said, okay, I believe you, but yes, you can't get a lot of those fluorescent tube lights anymore because they're high energy use. So we need to make the change out. So we'll change the fixtures out. So nice little investment. Of course, over time pays for itself with energy savings. Let's talk about fleet a little bit. Another quiet department that are 200-plus vehicles, very well done by Jim Crow, and he is the fleet advisor of one. We outsource that significantly, but what's been nice in the last couple of years with a lot of the new inventory and capital that we're able to do a little more preventative maintenance than just trying to keep the old stuff working. It's been nice having some of the new fleet with the police vehicles and put into place. In addition, we've done some upgrades through the ADOT donee sale, some of the vehicles in Public Works. So of that fleet of 200, when we introduce a new vehicle, obviously that gets us a little better head start on some downtime in vehicles. So looking forward to a new year of that, introducing new vehicles and dropping out the particular vehicles. Always important to note, we do have a change-out program. If you get a new vehicle, something has to drop out. So our fleet stays the same number, just those years get a little newer throughout the organization. So a little bit on that. Biggest, I think, what I'd like to comment on are talking about the HERF budget. It's infusion. I think Bill talked earlier and mentioned my name 3 or 4 times. Although it's $2 million, it's not a 119% increase like the clerk's office has, but it is a $2 million increase. Council, we're very excited in Public Works to enhance the street maintenance. I've done presentations throughout the community to different groups, and I get the same feedback of, yes, it was a good thing to put into place. Even though it's a tax increase, it's going towards street maintenance. They've been real happy with that. I've talked to many groups and get the same feedback that residents are happy that was put into place in the fall. Of course, we started collecting in January, and we're blasting off on January with already took chip seal bids, so we're ready to take off right after the new budget year with not only the chip seal, but also some overlays we got planned for. Viewpoint Drive is an overlay we have planned for $500,000. So all that particular money we're moving right away with in July and August, right to the front end of the budget year to move forward with that enhancement that we've promised to people that we would do and put that program in place over 5 years. Some heavy equipment to help support that in Public Works. We're getting a new mower, a hot patch trailer, which is actually a tow-behind type of patch machine that keeps the patch material hot, and it's a better maintenance capability for patching in the potholes in the cold winter months. So we're looking forward to that equipment. So get those particular upgrades, and we'll be able to do some of that pre-chip patching. In addition, we're going to bring you some of the outsourced contracts we've got in place to help with some of that patching to get us ready for chip seal and the like. So talked about restoring some of the existing pavement edges on some of the roads. So, and likewise, talked about an overlay and Castle Drive, because I'm sure Council's aware, we've got the parking lot under construction for our ribbon cutting ceremony here in a couple of weeks. But Castle Drive, we didn't have much money this year, but it's going to be one of our first projects out. We anticipate starting that project in July also, towards the latter part of July. New budget year, hit the ground running, and put these improvements in place. With that, be happy to answer any questions or any detail you might want to know.
Anybody want to make Norm happy with a question? Laura?
I want to thank you for meeting with all the citizens groups that you've done. On Sunday, there were some people at a meeting I was at, and they mentioned that they finally understood why your department needed those extra tax dollars. And so I think you're getting unintended positive consequences from meeting with them and just laying it all out. Because there was a gentleman that came up to me that's really been kind of grumpy with me, and he came up and apologized because you explained it better than I did. So thank you.
Probably polished the presentation a little bit, but when you look at the different buckets of money and you show some of those highlights of the presentation that we had, the longer version, some of those highlights really sum it up. I said, nobody's done anything for that many years you need to expect if it hasn't been benchmarked. And people want, or the residents of Prescott Valley want, better service levels of the streets. So we're going to put that into place, and we're really looking forward. If you've got, I guess that's the best case scenario in the business that we are, is when you can enhance that service level and make people happy. We're looking forward to the challenge this year.
Norman, I just wanted to say that on the fact of you pointing out as we outsource a lot of our work, that keeps our town government very limited, small, and just like Larry was saying, we do a great job with a very small amount of people. We do outsource a lot of things. We work together with a lot of different organizations, and we work well, and it all comes together and makes this a great town. So I really appreciate it. I look forward to the next year and all the work you got ahead of you.
Just this past Monday, Councilman Mallory, we did open up many bids for those outsourced contracts. Very strict competition and very tight margins between the bids. So we're going to present that to you towards the latter part of May so that we can get the contracts in place so that people can hit the ground running. And as I always mention to council, I always get the feedback that our budget's ready. We actually had a hole that other municipalities don't get their budgets ready. They aren't ready to spend money July 1st. We know what we're going to spend, do the cuts we need to, but we realize a great advantage and by contractors being available saying, well, you've got service you need, and thanks for awarding us that contract, and we start right away.
Good. Marty?
Yeah, it's. I'm always impressed by how orderly you have everything set up, ready to go July 1st, or whenever the first Monday is in July. And it's great that the money is being spent as well as it is, and it's going to go as far as it goes. Last year, I believe you started or completed the program regarding the stop signs. That's all done, and all of them have been done and installed?
Yes, to comment a little about that. Of course, that's not in the budget because that's funded outside, but it's a benefit we receive. To that point, the Phase 2 has been done, but we've got 95% plans on a Phase 3, which basically finishes out all the regulatory signs like chevrons and some more delineators. But we're going to be done, and we anticipate that project to be done in the fall. So once again, we look at about another $300,000 to $400,000 of federal money coming to upgrade our signs. So to answer your question, all the stop signs are done, all the yields and the significant regulatories. We're actually going through now and doing the big, majority of the scope is going to be roadway name signs, which have a certain safety factor to make sure emergency services can find particular addresses. So Phase 3 will be done, and we'll complete the town this fall.
Well, it's always nice to know that we have all this money coming in from outside. Basically, this is money that we sent to Washington, D.C., and now it's coming back to us in federal funds. So it's, once again, you're spending the money well, and it's going far. So thank you very much for that.
If I could take the opportunity to, Councilman Grossman, the PV pipeline, which has been contemplated for many years, we actually got funded, and we're going to have basically a pre-construction meeting at the end of this month. And we look forward to that project starting up this summer. And that's about a $1.6 million infusion of multi-use path. We talked about 2.5 miles that will connect Mountain Valley Park up to Antelope Park. Brian's talked about with that amenity in place, he can do more with, runs and, part of recreational opportunity. But keep in mind, that's not in this particular budget, but $1.6 million of a multi-use path that we're successful with pursuing grants that we put into place this coming budget year.
Good. Other questions? Mike?
Yeah, I just had kind of a comment, and that was, I think, one of the important things that we're going to see happen is the floodplain planning. And I'm wondering what's in the foreseeable future after that's been laid out in terms of our requirements to upgrade to meet those, maybe issues that they identify.
Yeah, Councilman Whiting, what it does do is with technology, our old mappings, you can do a much better job to utilize not only with the technology of the, let's call it the design and the science of the shape of the floodplain, but also what these are actually what's called orthorectified. So you can put that shape of what that waterway looks like, and you can actually do much better planning with knowing elevations also too. So you can put structures very much closer and identify what is able to be built and utilize the best you can of the ground. So that's the beauty of this particular mapping, is the resolution is so much better, and also some of the science they put in to identify. And it's nice just to tune them up with better science and reestablishing what that hydrology can be out there.
So we don't anticipate anything in our budget relative to, I guess you'd call it fixes regarding that, but in the future budgeting years, if there's issues, then we can address those then.
You might have looked at the placeholder in there. We do have $100,000 to put towards that, maybe to look at some other areas in more detail, or maybe some little quick fixes. So there is a little bit of money in there if within that budgetary constraint to not only implement the maps. There may be some opportunity when the public meetings. That's important too. Right. So if I understand that can be funded through the flood control, and we'll utilize that if we can. But it always seems like you can always need a little bit of a funding source in order to implement those maps.
Great. Yeah. Again, a good example of planning ahead. The other question I had was relative to, and we've talked about this, and I don't recall, the monuments for the signage for the town. Is that in your budget?
No, it's not. We didn't put that in this year. We didn't make the cut.
Okay, gotcha.
We had that discussion. We decided that that's for future. If future council would like to implement that.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Anything else, Norm?
No, thank you, Mayor. We're looking forward to next year.
Good job. Thank you, Norm. Okay, we move on to number I, Management Services, page 6-37. Bill, you are up.
Thank you, Mayor. I wish Larry was still here. I'd let him know that he always starts worrying me when he starts doing calculations. So it's always kind of so. But anyway, it's pretty straightforward. Overall, I would want to say my budget increased by 6.2% overall. Now, if he was here, I would tell you that my operating budget increased by 15.7% over the previous year. Now, when I originally came in with our budget meeting with Larry, I had a 3% budget increase overall. Then we started talking about credit card fees. I had one of my staff members start doing an analysis. We're going to pay approximately $150,000 plus probably this fiscal year as it relates to credit card fees. So community development, and Vicki she used a small example, but there are developers who come in that pull a permit that want $14,000 or whatever it is for a permit paid by a credit card. Well, in those transactions, depending on what kind of credit card you use, the rate varies from 3% to 4 or 5% is what we pay. So we have to kind of eat that cost. So in my discussion with Larry this year, I told him that every year I budget approximately $60,000, $65,000 in my budget between management services and the two utility budgets. We have approximately $65,000 budgeted. We're looking at approximately $120,000 that we're going to probably spend this year that I think we need to increase our budget. Now, this will take me significantly above the 3%, but I think it is more reflective of what cost we incur to run the department. So as a result, my budget is increased, my operating budget is increased by 16% over the previous year. Again, it's all in one line item. If you look throughout the budget, you'll see banking services. And that cost from this year to next year, that's where the bulk of the increases are. So that was the main increase in my operating budget. Casey is moving some of his money around. He does a great job. Actually, all my managers, Casey and Katie and Mark, do a great job with their budget. Casey has decided this year he's moving some of his money around to try to help with doing some more staffing, training. He hasn't done it. If you look in his budget, you can see for the last 3 years, probably 4 years or 5 years, he has done no training for his staff. And especially when you're dealing with technology, you got to stay up on the technology. So this year he is moving his money around. He still stayed within the 3%, and but he's doing a lot more training this year. Very little in equipment. Again, if you look at it, Casey, every year he's buying either new routers, new servers, things for the computer room. The only thing we're asking for is a new copier. Our current copier is, I think, at 1.2 million copies since the last time, since we purchased it. So it's the technician has said that we probably can make it a little bit longer, but you're starting to push it at this point because we don't see too many machines that have this many copies made before being replaced. So we're looking for what we do. We try not to print so much, but we're just a department that still prints a lot of paper, unfortunately. And the other thing, I mean, we have no staffing requests this year, and I think that's about all I'd like to add at this point.
Questions, anyone? Mike?
Well, I'm just wondering, as we talk about the fees incurred as far as charges, if there's any options for us. And I remember seeing, these new tech companies that are coming out, similar to PayPal. And I don't know if there's any way to reduce the impact of those utilizing a company that would reduce the fees in some way or another.
Most of the fees, unfortunately, are not from like the PayPals.
Yeah.
Where they're coming from are the actual credit card, MasterCard,
Well, I
Visa.
understand. Can they not be generated through PayPal?
No.
So there's just no options here.
No, the only option that we would have, and me and Larry have talked about this for quite a long time, is that we would have to implement a fee, a
Right.
convenience fee
I
or whatever
gotcha.
you want to call
Okay.
it, of you use your credit card, you got to pay us $2.50 or $5. Well, to some degree, we're trying to encourage credit card usage we have our online payment for utilities,
Right.
our online payment for Parks and Rec and things like that. So we're really trying to actually encourage it because it does take away from staff involvement.
Right.
Whenever you utilize the equipment that's in place and you don't have to worry about staff, utilizing staff time, it really saves the time, but it is a cost. And at some point, we may have to look at either the town absorbs these costs or we look at adding a fee to cover a portion of it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's an option, I think, and maybe something we should consider in the future as a fee. So, okay. Thank you.
Good. Laura?
I was looking at your objectives, and are we considering changing the town's banking services?
Yeah, per our policy, we're required to go out every 3 to 5 years. So we are up in that. Actually, it's probably 5 with 2 years we're allowed to extend it. So we are looking at probably be about a year from now in the fall, so that it will go into effect the beginning of a new fiscal year. So unfortunately, our time with Bank of America is up, and we'll have to be moving out, going on with competitive bids. And typically, we'll contact every local bank, and we'll send them an RFP to submit for a bidding process.
And tell me just a little bit about your implementation of e-payables program. What are the benefits to do that?
Well, the primary benefits of e-payables is that instead of mailing a check to a vendor, we can send it electronically. So instead of a staff member taking a check, printing a check, folding it, putting it in an envelope, mailing it, they basically give us the opportunity or authority to go ahead and send it electronically. And it's just, they get their money quicker, much quicker than through the mail. There are other options also available, but this is something that the banks are trying to provide as a service through the banks. We're looking into it. We're going to research and see if what kind of cost and benefits it is for the town. So, but that's the primary purpose.
I suspected that, but in my water world, some of the electronic things we've been involved with the federal government lately have been disastrous. And technology isn't always as good as they sell it. So I know you'll be very cautious and very careful in figuring that all out.
You bet. I mean, right now we utilize, to good or to bad, but we utilize technology for payment processing almost on a daily basis. Majority of the employees get their paychecks through direct deposit, so we just give them a little piece of paper saying, here's what you got paid, but the money is into the bank. Again, a lot of the security with the system that Casey has built is really what is important for that to be a safe transaction. So, yeah, and the banks are doing much, much better with that also. So we have safety on both sides. So I'm not as concerned. It's just whether or not there's a true benefit to the vendor at the end of the day.
I just don't like to assume anything. I had somebody else's money in my bank account last week. Go figure. Yeah. I didn't get to keep it.
No, obviously no.
Mary?
Yeah, you know, getting back on the fees on those credit cards, I just wanted to make a comment in the sense that a lot of companies now pay their employee. They don't really give them a choice. Like we would have a choice to go direct deposit, or you could get a manual check. But I'm here to tell you today, those choices are leaving, and you either sign up for direct deposit, or if you don't, then the company will automatically download and send you a pay card, and your paycheck will be on a type of a credit card, so you have no other choice. But so it's just something that I can see going into the future, that we're going to continue to probably really just be using these cards more and more. You know, it's interesting.
Yeah, we have very few people that actually still get a paycheck right now, except for even seasonals that come on with the 16, 17, 18-year-olds. Even they have checking accounts typically. Right. So we even send their money into directly deposit, but we still have a few employees who are just unwilling to kind of give up that actual paycheck.
Well, at my place of employment, you will give up your paycheck because you are either going to go direct deposit or you're going to get this credit card. And that's just the way that's going to be.
And it's a time factor, really. I mean, it's
really
a cost factor.
Yeah.
It really does save a lot.
Yeah, so I anticipate more and more going forward.
Any other questions? Anything else, Bill?
No, sir.
There be no more on that. We can move on to number J. Town clerk, risk management, page 627, up 119%. Whoa. Diane?
Everybody's getting you, Diane.
I think the secret's out.
He's trying to tell me it's actually more.
Oh, yeah. We all.
Just kidding,
Okay.
Diane. Good job.
You know, my original portion of my budget was under 3%. But then this thing came along called an election.
I knew it.
And it just blew my budget clean out of the water. And there was not a darn thing I could do about it. So while my predominant amount of my budgeting is the same as it's always been, guess what? The election portion is way up there over what it has always been. So we are stuck with what we are stuck with. Sorry, all I could say is sorry about that.
Elections are running out about 4 times what they used to be. 600%.
Probably about that. It's ridiculous.
And that's why our really well-informed citizens didn't want us to take the tax increase to a vote. They didn't want us spending, the majority of the people did not want us spending the money for that. And here's why. Look what it did to your budget.
Well, I I don't know what to say about that. You have heard my thoughts before. I don't feel that we need to go through them again about any of that. But hey, on the good side, been working very diligently to get the word out to our voting electorate out there about when the election is and what the changes are and all that other good stuff. So that hopefully if we've got to spend that amount of money, people actually show up and take advantage of it. And we'll actually increase our voter participation. I'm really, really hoping that. I've already done 9 speaking engagements, and I'm hoping to continue in that effort to increase that voting population out there so that we do get our money's worth.
Do we know how many pages the ballot will be this time? Because it's going to be huge. With
I
everything.
cannot even begin to predict because I don't know what all of the district elections that are coming up yet. There are a few of the small communities around here in Yavapai County that are having an election, but I don't know of all the municipalities yet, or not municipalities, but the districts, which could really extend the length of the ballot.
Because the federal is always first, county second, cities and towns last. So we're going to be right at the end of however many pages those are. So
that's very true.
So we have to be sure and educate our citizens to not give up, to go through all those pages. And
yes,
that's one of the reasons why we didn't want to be put in this situation. But here we are, so we'll educate.
Well, all we can do is what they tell us to do at the state and federal level, isn't it? They didn't leave us any choice. So, you want to hear anything about anything in particular about the rest of the budget, or
Anything special? What do you say?
think there's any big
Rick is
surprises
saying
in there?
everything else is pretty clear. Anything you had, Laura? Anything else?
No, I agree with Rick. When I read through it, I had no surprises, just the election, which we were expecting.
Any other? Mary, did you have a comment?
No, sir.
Any other comments?
I would only add one thing to my comments, and that is, don't forget that these figures also include a May 2017 election.
Right.
We may not have to have that election. We may have to have that election, but I have to budget for it.
It looks pretty good, Diane. I think you've done a good job.
So you may only be over 100.
Possibly over 100%. Yeah. At this point,
17.
Who's counting except everybody, right? I think just about everybody unanimously has had something to say about that 119% tonight. Sorry, but it's out of my control.
That's caused by one single item, and our legislators have been a big help with that, too. Okay, any other comments, questions?
I was just wondering, what are you anticipating? What is it in May of 2017 that you're...
If you'll recall, there has been some discussion before council, several times actually, about a transit system.
Okay. So it would be for the possible...
If that goes forward and participation level, it shows that it is something that the citizens of the town want, then it would have to be on a May election.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering on time frames, there's some sort of a process involved, I assume, that we can prepare and know there's a certain date no later than that we would have to know that.
Oh, yes, I would have all of that stuff prepared. Keep in mind that we're talking May 2017.
Right. Oh, I understand, right.
Yeah, that's still quite a ways off.
About a year from now, so.
Yeah, I wouldn't be preparing that right now.
Yeah, okay.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments?
I just want to thank Diane because I think she's one of the underestimated departments here. And I want to thank you for always being as much ahead of the curve as possible, and the quality department that you run.
Thank you so much, Councilman.
Any other comments? Good job, Diane.
Thank you, Mayor.
Done.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no other ones, we still have one final agenda item, and that's adjournment. Meeting is adjourned. Bill, we're going to add something else?